Well, it seems that it's pumpkin spice season. Autumn usually brings the pumpkin spice craze. Everywhere I go, I see signs for pumpkin spice, coffee shops, grocery stores and things like that. I'm hit with the whole pumpkin spice craze. Are you a fan of pumpkin spice? Well, what I've got for you today are fragrances that have a pumpkin spice-like quality, that have a smell that reminds you of pumpkin spice. So basically, we're utilizing several different spices that go in to create the pumpkin spice. And these are featured in the fragrances that I'm going to talk to you about today. If you don't know much about pumpkin spice, I'm going to let you know the spices that go into the creation of pumpkin spice, and also let you know 20 different fragrances that to me smell like pumpkin spice. So if you're curious to learn about these fragrances, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Sebastian. I'm talking about pumpkin spice today. Let me know if you're a fan of the smell. Are you guys at a place where you get to experience pumpkin spice? I'm not sure if in the European or other countries, places that are not typically American, have the whole pumpkin spice craze. So let me know if you're familiar with it or if you're not. But generally what goes into the making of pumpkin spice is cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, we've got allspice, and ginger. These are the main notes or spices that go into the creation of pumpkin spice. Basically, if you smell it, you're going to really notice the spices that are in there. Sometimes they also add cardamom and black pepper to round out the pumpkin spice combo, but generally for me it's the cinnamon, the cloves, the allspice, the ginger, and nutmeg that goes into it. And I've got fragrances here today that feature these notes. They'll remind you of pumpkin spice and so on. Before I get to the fragrances though, I do want to let you guys know we have some Scent Club kit number. What kit number are we on? I've been so busy I haven't even kept up. 12 and also 11 that are still selling. If you haven't gotten your kit, please go get it now. We're going to run out of these very soon, and we're going to start on the next kits very soon. There's also a mystery box dropping as well. But there's been some delays, unfortunately, and I'll announce those sometime in the next couple of weeks. I'm trying to get everything put together to, drop those next coming kits. And I've got kits that are appropriate for the season, and also mystery box, which is chock full of amazing samples. So those will be announced as well. But if you haven't bought your kit yet, number 11 and 12, please go catch it. I have it linked in the info box. But let's go ahead and get started with the pumpkin spice fragrances. We're starting off, it's an unranked list by the way. We're starting off with the House of Frederic Malle. It's Noir Épices, this one right here. So Noir Épices to me is the spice bomb of the House of Frederic Malle, and it's actually chock full of spices like cloves and cinnamon. That's very familiar. You've got that pumpkin spice vibe, along with a floral touch of rose and geranium. Geranium actually helping the rose to create a bit of a rosiness. But there's also black pepper here, nutmeg. Remember I was mentioning these do come up in pumpkin spice. And then to round out the fragrance, we've got some woods, earthy notes like patchouli and vanillic touches. For me also, there's a prominent orange up top. Do you remember when you got oranges and you stuck cloves on it? It gives me that kind of a vibe also when I'm smelling the fragrance, but with an overdose of rose. Check it out if you don't know Noir Épices. Total pumpkin spice vibe there. But moving on to the House of MANOS GERAKINIS, it's Immortelle, this one right here. This does feature a very autumn-like note of Immortelle. It's called Immortelle. It features Immortelle, lots of it. So it creates that caramelly brown sugary touch that is very, very prominent with this note. But there's also cloves here, cinnamon, brown sugar, benzoin, milk, sandalwood, patchouli, giving you a speculous kind of vibe, but more with the pumpkin spice combo of the cinnamon and cloves. Really delicious gourmand. If you haven't tried it and you like the idea of cookie butter or speculous, try Immortelle from the House of MANOS GERAKINIS. Then moving on to the House of J.U.S. This is SPICYDELICE, this one right here. This actually was featured in a mystery box last November, a year ago. And once again, we've got a very spicy fragrance giving me major, you know, pumpkin spice vibes here. Lots of cardamom, lots of ginger, pink pepper, cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon, Davana, vanilla, and amberwood. The amberwood is very prominent. You do get that kind of amberwoody, very common smell in the dry down, a bit like ambroxan, but lots of woods, muskiness, all that combined in the base with vanilla. But up top, it's all spices and freshness and warmth all combined together to give you that kind of a pumpkin spice vibe. If you don't know this one, check it out. This is J.U.S. SPICYDELICE. It's quite delicious, by the way, if you haven't tried that one. Please do. So one of the best examples of pumpkin spice is from the house of L'Artisan. This is Tea for Two. And even though it's a tea-focused fragrance, it has a major pumpkin spice vibe here. Lots of tea here with tobacco. And then there's cinnamon, there's spices with honey, there's ginger, star anise, gingerbread. And then it eventually settles to a leathery vanillic thing. But there's a lot of freshness up top with bergamot. But to me, it's a really super delicious tea fragrance that's uber spicy, and the idea of pumpkin spice totally comes to mind here when I'm wearing this one, and it smells super fantastic. If you've ever walked into a store and all you get is pumpkin spice, the smell, you might want to try this fragrance or any of the fragrances that I'm talking about today. So this is L'Artisan Tea for Two. Only thing about this one, I'm uncertain if it's still selling. I hope it's not discontinued. If you guys have any info on it, please let us know. But moving on to the house of Baruti, it's chai. And a lot of chai spice fragrances do give me a pumpkin spice vibe, especially something like this. Here, once again, we've got tea, black tea in this case, along with cardamom, cinnamon, milk, cloves, ginger, pepper. There's also cacao here, vanilla, leather, rose, and musk. I feel like the idea might be similar between these two fragrances, Tea for Two and chai from Baruti, but they act very differently. You definitely experience the pumpkin spice vibe here with the Baruti, and it's also very concentrated. This is the extrait de parfum version of this fragrance, and you really only need a few sprays to experience that whole pumpkin spice vibe. So this is Baruti's chai. Let me know if you're familiar with that one. But moving on to the house of DIPTYQUE, and it's low, this one right here. This one, I've been a fan since the 2000s when it was in these square bottles, and instantly thought of the holidays when I smelled this because it's an overdose of cinnamon and cloves. There's also geranium here, there's sandalwood and rose. That whole idea of the spicy fragrances with rose in it is very interesting. I feel like I experienced it with JHL a long time ago, and then also Cinnabar from years ago. So it's kind of happening here with this fragrance, and also with the Noir piece from the house of Frederic Malle. It's not about the rose though, it's for me mostly about the cinnamon and cloves, and that's what's giving you that whole pumpkin spice vibe. It's got holiday written all over it. Thanksgiving comes to mind with this one, because around this time is when pumpkin spice is like, you know, pushed at us, you know, pumpkin spice here and pumpkin spice there. But low, it's a great example of a fragrance that reminds me of the pumpkin spice spices. But moving on to the house of Costume National, it's Costume National Homme Parfum. And this one also giving me that kind of a vibe. So this one, to me, even though it doesn't mention it, I also get a tea vibe and also a dried fruity vibe as well. But it's an overdose of cinnamon and cloves, and this is what's giving me that vibe of the pumpkin spices. But there's also lots of amber here, sandalwood, patchouli, vetiver, and some freshness from grapefruit. An amazing fragrance. I really love the original, wore so much of it, and really happy with the Parfum version when they launched the Parfum version. If you haven't smelled this one, please do. Giving you that whole pumpkin spice vibe with the cinnamon cardamom combo. It's Costume National Homme Parfum. Let me know if you're familiar with it. So moving on to an indie niche house of Libertine fragrance, it's Gilded. This one right here. Just to be upfront, the bottles have been changed for this house. And are they also changing their name? I had read or heard something somewhere. So double check. But this is another example of a fragrance that reminds me of pumpkin spices. It's lots of cardamom, there's lots of cinnamon here, brown sugar, Immortelle, and Olibanum, so giving you that kind of resinous, incensey smokiness against all the warm spices and the fresh spices. And of course the Immortelle, which we learned about here with MANOS GERAKINIS Immortelle, giving you that kind of, you know, caramelized brown sugar effect in fragrances that gives you that idea of something like cookie butter or speculoos. Really delicious holiday fragrance here, Gilded, from the house of Libertine fragrance. Then moving on to the house of Italie Brut Orange, this is like this. we actually have pumpkin in this fragrance. And here's another thing. I was looking for a lot of pumpkin fragrances. Not a lot of pumpkin fragrances exist, guys, but this is the most popular pumpkin fragrance, I feel like. This is pumpkins, Immortelle, ginger, tangerine, heliotrope, musk, vetiver, neroli, and rose. To me, it's that whole Immortelle giving you that kind of soft, buttery, caramel brown sugar thing happening against the pumpkin, which is slight bit vegetally and then slight bit fruity at the same time here. Definitely creating that whole pumpkin spice vibe with the addition of the ginger. When you're wearing it, you experience it, but I would say this is not a super duper intense, warm, spicy holiday vibe, but definitely gives you that whole pumpkin spice vibe, especially since it's got the pumpkins and the Immortelle and the ginger added as well. So this is Like This from the house of État Libre d'Orange. Then moving on to the house of Miller Harris, it's Soufflot, this one right here. Are you guys familiar with this one? So this is created by Matthew Nardin, and I believe we've got 3 fragrances that he's created in this video. But a super delicious pumpkin spice vibe here with this fragrance. In addition to that, we also have chestnuts here, tobacco, hazelnuts, leather, benzoin, honey, cinnamon leaves, Peru balsam, labdanum, orchanox, cypriol, and jasmine. Super, super delicious, guys. If you haven't tried this, it's almost like you're adding the pumpkin spices to some kind of a dessert that you're preparing for the holidays. It's giving you that kind of vibe, but then there's also tobacco in here, so it gives you that slight smoky ashiness against the gourmand touches, and then of course the spices, the pumpkin spices. So this is Soufflot from the house of Miller Harris. Let me know if you're familiar with that one. Then another fragrance created by Matthew Nardin. This is Reine de Saba's Divine Temptation. I feel like they might be kind of distant related, but this one goes boozy. Quite boozy here with a lot of amber. There's figs here, cinnamon, rum, cloves, gaiac wood, balsam of Peru or Peru balsam, patchouli, and vanilla. I think Matthew Nardin does some great creations. I feel like he's done a great job here also with Soufflot. This is a really, really awesome collection of fragrances that he's done, and there's another one coming here soon I'll let you know about. But if you don't know Divine Temptation from Reine de Saba, please check it out. Really wonderful offering. This house to me is an amazing house. They have some amazing original creations, and all fragrances, each and every one of the fragrances is created by a different perfumer, and with Divine Temptation it's Matthew Nardin. They usually write the name of the perfumer right there. So either way, this is Divine Temptation from the house of Reine de Saba for a really great pumpkin spice experience. Alright, next up going to the house of Lectimus London, it's Spice d'Arno, this one right here. This one also, even though it doesn't have your traditional pumpkin spices, for me when I wear this one, it acts very spicy and giving me that kind of a pumpkin spice effect added to some kind of gourmand touches. There's a lot of vanilla here with thyme. There's iris, saffron, leather, myrrh, orange blossom. There's oud. There's pink pepper, lemons, gurgeon balsam, cashmeran, bran, cardamom, and cistus labdanum. So it's got this bready, doughy effect happening here with all this gooey, delicious, sweet and syrupy touches with ambery vanillic notes as well, and then also balsamic notes. But in the end, it's a really delicious creation by the perfumer, and definitely a wonderful gourmand that gives me the pumpkin spice vibe. And there's no pumpkin here, although you've got the color of the pumpkin here on the bottle, but it's a super delicious gourmand. This is Lectimus London's Spice d'Arno. Let me know if you're familiar with that one. But moving on to the house of Plume Impression, it's Royal Bourbon, this one right here. So Royal Bourbon in the end has a lot of cinnamon and rum, and it's giving you that kind of a very holiday pumpkin spice vibe. Spices like cinnamon, there's vanilla here, there's ginger, tobacco, caramel, pepper, licorice, amber, cedar, leather. The combination is super intoxicating, super boozy and delicious, and very warm and spicy. And even though I haven't thought about licorice as a spice to be added to the pumpkin spice combo, I feel like you can really do that and kind of get away with it. But for me, like I said, it's not traditionally there. Normally it's the cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, allspice, and ginger, but in this fragrance it adds a bit of this kind of light boozy effect against the rum's booziness. But really super delicious. This is Royal Bourbon from the house of Plume Impression. Next, going to the house of Mancera, it's Tonka Cola. And even though this is fizzy cola, you've got a lot of warm spices in here that are featured in the pumpkin spices. to give you that whole pumpkin spice effect. In the end, it's cola, tonka beans, black cherries, cinnamon stick, Indonesian patchouli, nutmeg, lemons, powdery vanilla, benzoin. In the end, it's very ambery, it's resinous, it's sticky, gooey, and fizzy at the same time. And that tonka beans and cherries combo together makes for a really wonderful, warm, spicy gourmand with the whole pumpkin spice effect happening in there. Let me know if you've sampled this one. It's one of the best from Mancera. It's Tonka Cola from the House of Mancera. A wonderful offering. But moving on to the House of Atelier des Ors, it's Rouge Sarré. This one right here. By the way, I just heard that they're coming out with vintage versions of these. This one, Lune Feline and their Rose. So I'm going to have to get my nose on those because Rouge Sarré is my favorite. Let's see what the differences are. But this fragrance also gives me that whole pumpkin spice effect, especially for the fact that it has a lot of cinnamon in this with plums. There's dates, vanilla, patchouli, Peru balsam, gaiac wood, heliotrope, sandalwood. It's a super delicious, gooey, balsamic, sweet, spicy, cinnamony, gourmand fragrance that gives me that whole warm, spicy pumpkin spice effect that I sometimes like in fragrances. So this is Atelier des Ors Rouge Sarré. Still my favorite from that house. I'm hoping they come out with an extrait of that, but it's a super delicious fragrance from that house that I can't get enough of. Alright, up next, going to the house of Serge Lutens. This is 5 o'clock à gingembre. This one right here. Are you familiar with this one? So in the end, this is a very gingery, fizzy, almost like ginger ale fragrance, but there's a lot of warm spices in here like cinnamon that gives me that whole pumpkin spice vibe. So it's a lot of tea, candied ginger, cinnamon, bergamot, woodsy notes, honey, amber, pepper, cacao, and patchouli. Super delicious fragrance from this house. And I think it has quite a bit of following, and the ginger is really, really bright. It does have that sweetness since it's candied, but the fact that they've got ginger and cinnamon together along with pepper, it gives you that whole pumpkin spice vibe. Let me know if you're familiar with 5 o'clock à gingembre from the house of Serge Lutens. But moving on to the next fragrance, the third fragrance created by Matthew Nardin. This is Smokin' Hot from the house of By Kilian. It's bourbon vanilla, lots of bourbon vanilla here with apples, cinnamon, shisha tobacco, oak moss, and of course tobacco and orkanox. It's really, really wonderful. It's very, very boozy and a delicious creation by Matthew Nardin for the house of By Kilian. I'm not speaking a lot about Kilian fragrances, but they do some great boozy fragrances and also really wonderful fragrances that feature gourmand notes. And here, with the fact that there's a lot of vanilla with a lot of cinnamon and that fruitiness of the apple, it's giving me that whole pumpkin spice vibe with a fruity edge like the apples that are in here. So the fruitiness of the apples gives you the bit of freshness, but everything else is warm and spicy. This is Smokin' Hot from the house of Kilian. Then moving on to the house of Tom Ford, it's Tobacco Vanille. And Tobacco Vanille has always given me that whole pumpkin spice vibe. It's lots of spices here like cloves and cinnamon mixed in with vanilla and tobacco, of course. And then of course there's also some cacao and dried fruity notes when it's drying down as well. It's one of the best from this house. I'm dying to find out why they don't make a extreme or intense or a parfum version of this. It's definitely one of the best from this house and it deserves it. But if you like the idea of a Tom Ford fragrance that's giving you the pumpkin spice vibe, definitely try Tobacco Vanille from this house. Then moving on to the house of Parfums de Marly, it's Wajan. Once again, giving you that whole warm, spicy pumpkin spice effect with lots of cinnamon. There's honey, there's tonka, there's benzoin, vanilla, osmanthus, labdanum, ambergris, artemisia, patchouli, and musk. It's super delicious. It's warm, it's spicy, it's gooey, it's ambery honeyed as well. So there's a sticky effect happening when you're wearing this one. But in the end, it gives you that whole warm, spicy pumpkin spice effect when you're wearing it. Really, really delicious. One of the best from the house of Parfums de Marly. That's Wajan. And last but not least, we're going to end the list with Les Eaux Primordiales Ambre Supermassive. This one right here. Really super delicious. It's actually grown on me since I did my review. In fact, I haven't aired a video review of this one and I should air it. I shot it like back in August. If you're looking forward to a review of this, let me know. In that video, I did mention it was not my favorite, but this has grown on me quite a bit. Sometimes fragrances do that, and it is a super delicious example of something that gives you pumpkin spice vibes. Lots of cinnamon here with apple, vanilla, rum, honey, amber, peaches, sesame, seeds, tobacco, saffron, musk, heliotrope, pineapple, and rose. Just imagine you've got like a pineapple cooking in the oven and you've sprinkled it with like honey and also all that pumpkin spices that would go into the creation of the pumpkin spices. It gives me that kind of an effect. But it's an overdose of the cinnamon with the apples, and the pineapple sweetness and tartness comes in here as well, along with all the honeyed ambery touches. It's super delicious. Much better than the original for me. This is Amber Supermassive, and that's the last fragrance today in the pumpkin spice collection of fragrances. Let me know your thoughts on these fragrances. Are you a fan? Do you like the idea of pumpkin spices, or do you stay away? Sometimes the pumpkin spice smells that I get from all the different places I visit that advertise pumpkin spice do come off a bit synthetic, but for me, these all smell naturalistic, and I love the way these fragrances smell. So if you like the idea of wearing something that smells of pumpkin spice, definitely try these 20 fragrances, and then come back and let me know what your thoughts are. And just before we wrap up, if you haven't bought your Scent Club kit, 11 and 12, we have some left. I haven't been pushing these kits because it's been quite busy lately for me, but just want to let you know we have some available, so I hope you guys get to take advantage of it before we drop the next kits. The next kits should come within the next month, so stay tuned for those. But in the meantime, we have 11 and 12 still selling in the store, and I've got it linked in the info box. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.